Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a terrific day ahead of you. In today's video, I have for you a draft which you probably have not seen on the timeline. Now, the purpose of this video is not to uncover 15 times 0% owned players and say you should buy them all, but rather it was to build a draft that you maybe hadn't had seen and showcase it in a way whereby, at least if you don't take the draft, because it's not my current draft, so I clearly don't think it's the best team, you take a few of the players or a few of the ideas and maybe implement them into your team to help you out. But overall, in terms of maybe the structure and the combinations of players in this particular draft, I would say it's rather differential, and I certainly haven't seen it on the timeline or anything particularly close to the 95th percent. So I look forward to presenting that. If you are one of the thousands of people who watch regularly but have not subscribed, I would greatly appreciate if you could go and click that button. I put a lot of effort into this video. It would just take you a couple seconds and it would be greatly appreciated. And equally, if you enjoy the video, then make sure to drop a like on it. Again, that would be greatly appreciated. Without anything else needing to be said, let's hop into it. Now, as explained in the introduction, the draft itself is differential when you consider the player combinations and maybe the structure as well, to a lesser extent. But the actual players in it, maybe not so much, especially for some of them. Some of them for sure, as you will see, but some of them, including Iliman and Ndiaye, no. But I've been looking forward to doing this piece of analysis on him because he is my favorite 6.5 midfielder. I would like to explain why. First of all, I went and watched all of his goals from last season. Naturally, I, of course, watched him last season when I was watching Everton games. And here are some conclusions that I can draw. Number one, when this guy receives in the pockets, right? When he receives in between the lines, he's going to be very, very dangerous this season. Playing in a role where he's either coming off the flank, but probably in a more central role. Whether they operate with a back three at times, Everton, and he plays as an inside forward, or more regularly, he functions as a 10-like figure. His dribbling, center of gravity, ability to ride contact, balance, and ability to use a short back lift for shots whilst generating sufficient, good power is very impressive. Eden Hazard-esque to some extent, and with that particular skill set, it means that if he is in those pockets, he's going to hurt you. Now, there's a reason that I keep bringing that up and finding himself situated between the lines. The reason for that is because look at the strikers they have, Beto and what's being called a Drogba-like in Barry. If you can use their ability to pin the centre-backs, hold up play, and link, especially when you can go long to them and you can get Iliman and Ndiaye up the pitch, then all of a sudden you're going to find him situated higher, you're going to find him situated in the pockets, and you're going to find him receiving in those positions. And when he does so, with the abilities that we've just discussed above, he can really, really, really hurt you. Now, I think given the type of player he is, I don't think in those really quick transitions that maybe Barcelona score at times, he's going to be profiting off those too much. I don't think that box crashing type of run in those quick transitions is his real bread and butter. I think he's better with ball to feet, and then utilizing the skills that I've discussed above. Also, combination plays, passes at shorter distances as well. In pressurized situations, I could think he could do really well there. He is a great carrier with the ball. So I guess when you have that in your arsenal, you would associate it with also being really good off the ball in these quick transitions, but it's just not really his game as such yet. So that's something to consider. But for Everton, I think they'll take a little bit more onus of possession this season. And if they utilize Barry / Beto in this type of way, you could certainly see Iliman and Ndiaye hurt teams and start to not just return, but also fall, especially as a midfielder. And of course, he's got penalties, and he's a good penalty taker at that. However, don't take my word for it. Instead, let's go and look at what he did last season and use it as an example to showcase that what everything has been said is in fact true. So here you see Ashley Young punch the ball into Iliman and Ndiaye, who's gone from out to in, into that left half space, and then he's gone into the box where he's crowded, essentially, by, 5 players. And this, well, I will show you the result in a second. But what I wanted to showcase here is, one, it's not just when he's in those 10-like positions that he can receive or create situations for him to receive in these type of zones, but he can go from out to in because he's intelligent enough and good enough. And I particularly want to put onus on the first thing mentioned there. And second of all, as showcased in the image, when he is in these really tight spaces, he's got the dribbling ability. He's so good with his ball with the ball at his feet that he can manufacture what you shall see on the next slide. In the bottom image, you can see the progression of this sequence, and you can also see the short backlift, which he uses to generate quite a bit of power and puts a very good finish in the back of the net. Secondly, away at Manchester City, and for those of you who remember the goal, the ball came at him quickly. It came at him in a way where he was probably a little bit surprised that he received it. I think it was Rico Lewis who missed it or misjudged the flight of the bounce or flight of the ball, and he controls it very well, and then he just smashes it home top corner with, again, fairly short backlift. And this is just showcasing, one, the short backlift, but also the real talent he's got. And I think in FPL, having that, similar to like Cunha last year, at times is just really useful. Maybe it's not going your way as a team. Maybe like Everton aren't playing so well. Maybe the other side have lined up well. But in a moment, if you can just give him the ball, maybe he'll pull into that left half space, similar to how Cunha did, dribble through the defense and smash it home with that short backlift, utilizing that talent as well. That's where he can become a really dangerous asset, because it's not just the conditions that are going to really help him get in points, but also the level of quality is so high that he can almost do it himself. This slide right here is exactly what I was speaking about regarding Iliman and Ndiaye from a position standpoint. He receives between the lines, between a bank of 5 and a bank of 5 behind him with a couple players chasing. He utilizes all of the skills that we discussed earlier and then scores a magnificent goal from them. I think with Beto and particularly Barry functioning in the role that we discussed earlier, you're going to see these types of situations and these types of positions be picked up more from Iliman and Ndiaye. And as I've showcased to a few examples, and there's more, right? I've taken all the goals from the Everton YouTube channel, which I appreciate them getting the video out. It just showcases that he has got the talent to do so. And I think you'll see the situation about more and more this season in comparison to last, as Everton improve as a side and they optimize their dynamics. One of their better players. So I'm certainly looking forward to the prospect of owning him, and I think he could do really well. We're in a transition phase with FPL because at the start of the season, when the game launched, I think you saw a lot more defenses consist of conventional structures and conventional theories and lines of thinking behind them. Whereas now, with the introduction of CBIT, so you get defensive contribution points, for clearances, blocks, interceptions, and tackles, I think you're seeing a shift towards them. And I'm really looking to embody that because I think it's a big deal. If you get a defensive contribution, you get 2 points, right? An assist is 3 points. If I offered you, as I will show you on this case, 13 assists in a season for a player, you would snap my hand up, especially if they're from a good defense, especially if they don't cost 6 million. That's exactly what you have in Murillo. So let's go into it. Now, the defensive unit is not just consisting of defenders, because I think there is something to be said about the highest upside defenders still being the ones who can get the goals and assists in combination with the clean sheets, of course. So the defense is Murillo, Branthwaite, Agbadu, Cucurella, Renildo. Apologies if I mispronounced that. Let's look at the CBIT values and scores for Murillo, Branthwaite, and Agbadu. Now, Murillo's CBIT's points per start is 1.06. That's over 1 in every 2 games he's returning CBIT. Now, it's only 1 less point than a... Right? And in total, his CBIT score last year was 38. He gained 38 points from defensive contributions. Essentially, 13 assists. And so 13 assists. And as I said in the first bit of this slide, if I offered you a defender at 5'5", playing for one of the best defenses last year, with 13 assists, you would snap my hand up. Now, in my opinion, there's no reason why Forest can't replicate a good defensive record. Somewhat similar to last year, at least. And there's no reason that like his CBIT should dramatically decrease, because from a defensive standpoint, I don't think they change too much. And I don't think his playstyle will change too much. Think about how aggressive he is, how much he steps up, and how that helps in this defensive contribution category. And he ranks second amongst all defenders for that. That's so impressive. That's so impressive. Branthwaite ranks 5th in total for the total CBIT score with 32. So he got it in 16 games. And his points per star is even higher. That's 1.14. Essentially 11 assists. And if you think about Everton's defense as well, it's a good defense and they can certainly rack up clean sheets. And I think he's an aerial threat from set pieces as well. And yeah, sure, he didn't score last season, but in the season prior, he got 3. And I wouldn't be surprised to see him back on the score sheet soon. So again, I really like that. Now, Agbadu is here not just for his value on the CBIT, because 0.88 is really good. He only had 16 starts, so his total value is negatively skewed, but the rotation with Branthwaite is quite wonderful aside from Game Week 4, and we discuss this in the next slide. Branthwaite 1 to 3 solid 4 is at home to Villa. Now, this isn't so bad until you see the squad composition. And then you use them in 6 and 7, which is cool. But Agbadu for 5, 8, and 9, Burnley, Sunderland. That's pretty much, you couldn't ask for too much more. Maybe even if you only get CBIT in one game, and you expect a clean sheet from him in another, that's still not bad at all for your 4.5 million rotated defender. And again, I'm being somewhat conservative there, saying he only gets one CBIT and only one. So this defense overall works out wonderfully, especially with the centre backs and their CBIT scores, which is why I proposed this, just to capitalize on that variable in particular. And now let's go and look at Cucurella and Sels in particular. I mentioned in the introduction of the slide that I didn't just want to build a defense that focuses on CBIT, because I think at the end of the day, you get 6 points for a goal and 3 for an assist. That's more than CBIT, right? Yes, they're harder to come by, but when you hit, you're going to hit big. Combine that with clean sheets, and then the bonuses that are more likely to occur, that's where your slam dunk is. Now, if you can combine that with CBIT, for example, Milenkovic picks up CBIT and scores a goal and keeps a clean sheet, perfect, beautiful. But the players who satisfy all categories are practically non-existent, right? So I think some form of balance, especially when you've got quite bullish about a particular attacking asset, is certainly a good play. And for me, Cucurella is still the one. Yeah, sure, he outperformed his XG, but I think with the positions that he's getting into, the quality of ball striking, the fact that he can get assists in a few different ways as well, and the fixtures in combination with the clean sheet potential, I personally really like it at the moment. And he's good on the BPS, right? Like, he did well on the BPS. And I'm not just talking about the points scored, but the actual amount of points within the system that he got. So that's good. Now, one concern about this defensive unit as a whole is game week 4. Forest are away at Arsenal. Everton face Villa at home, and you'll see who I've got from there. And Agbadu doesn't have a particularly easy fixture either. The way I see myself dealing with this is essentially it's offset by the scores in the weeks either side, or, you know, Marilla picks up some CBIT, maybe Sels picks up some saves. There's no reason they can't keep a clean sheet at the Emirates. I mean, they did so at Anfield last season, which I thoroughly enjoyed. So maybe they do it again and get a bit lucky, and so on and so on. So yeah, it doesn't look great on paper, but I think with the CBIT being introduced and in these harder games, Branthwaite, Marilla, and Sels with the saves, they do quite well. And moving on to Sels, obviously I spoke about him in my own team reveal, and I will discuss him in depth again at a later date. But for now, with Forest's defensive abilities and in combinations for the fixtures, a really good ceiling and floor there. And I think both of those are amplified by the fact that the saves inside the box get an extra, or saves from shots which were taken inside the box, get an extra 1 point on the BPS. If he ever comes across a game where he makes 3, that's 3 extra BPS, and that's a lot. Like, they're always quite close, especially when Forest keep clean sheets. So that's a lot, and I think at 5 million, really, really good keeper. I also quite like the romantic element for me coming back season 2. Talking about coming back for season 2, I mean, Morgan Rogers treated me so well last year. So is the Aston Villa double up going under the radar? Still, no. I obviously proposed this in my last video, underrated and overrated players. But we have new information, and I wanted to present it to you because I think it only amplifies the potential for us to bring them in our sides and for them to actually be good assets when doing so. Against Eintracht Frankfurt, he didn't use the 4-2-3-1 Unai Emery that he'd been using quite a bit last season. He used left, Asensio in the middle, Rogers on the right, Ramsey on the left, McGinn in the middle, Tielemans in the middle, Rogers on the right. But rather, it really was a 4-2-2. For the first half, he lines up with Watkins and Buendia up top. He lines up with Malen on the right flank, who we're certainly going to come on to, Jacob Ramsey on the left, with a base of Tielemans and Kamara. I'm very confident. Tielemans and Kamara, right? In his more typical, and that's more often in the past, 4-2-2. There's a reason why I think this is so important. If he's going to shift from the 4-2-3-1 to the 4-2-2, how is this going to maximize Rogers in terms of FPL? I'll showcase that on the next slide. Secondly, Marlen's role in all of this. I'll explain how that I think that could benefit Watkins and Rogers to an extent as well in the next slide, and then what his potential big game system will be and should it differ from this. So now let's go on to the graphic analysis. Top image transitions into the bottom image, and what you'll see is they're 4 seconds apart. And I don't want you to look at that and be like, oh, it's just 4 seconds, that's a big deal. it is a big deal because in 4 seconds, especially nowadays with how these athletes are, with how quick some of these transitions can be, you can get from your own box to the other box in lightning speed, just like that. Look where Rodgers is in the first image when I guess the pattern of play is slightly more settled. As opposed to like operating on that right flank in that 4-2-3-1, he's in such a central position, right? Because he's playing up top in a 4-2-2. And realistically, I don't think anyone else is going to play that. Maybe Malen with Watkins a little bit when it comes to the Premier League, but I really just think it'll be Rodgers. He's there in that zone. He's going to be so much more likely to deliver goals and assists in comparison to when he's playing on the right. And as we discussed many times last season, he's just more proficient with the angles from the left-hand side as opposed to the right. So when you put him in those zones, you're just going to get, in my opinion, a much higher probability when it comes to output. And 4 seconds later, the ball gets slipped in behind on the right-hand side. Malen receives, and then he ends up sliding that across, and Rodgers puts home very, very well. I mean, like, it appears an easy finish, but he did it so confidently and with such conviction that I was like, yeah, this guy really is worth the money. So the reason I'm bringing this up is if he's going to play this role as opposed to the one on the right, and Unai Emery's utilizing this system again, I think we're in business. Now, what happens in the big games? Does he go back to a 4-3-2-1 where he uses either McGinn or Tielemans as his 10, and then Ramsey on the left, and then Rodgers on the right, or Rodgers on the left, Malen on the right? Yeah, maybe. And in those big games, we'll just have to deal with that. But Rodgers is good enough and Villa are good enough whereby if he does use that system, it's not like we have no chance at output, right? I'm hardly putting him in goal, right? It's still there. It's just better, in my opinion, when it's in this particular system, right? Rodgers isn't here. The other thing is Daniel Malen. Now, I feel for Ollie Watkins because I don't think the system really optimizes him. And I think he's gone. I'm a really big Ollie Watkins fan. I think he's a really, really, really good player. However, with a slightly more traditional wide player in Daniel Malen, which Unai Emery doesn't use too much. Like, for example, some people really rated Leon Bailey and it didn't really work out for him. I think the system certainly didn't help. I'm not his biggest fan, but that's not the point. But utilizing Daniel Malen wide, I think you'll see Watkins and even Rodgers be able to receive different types of situations in the games that are created by this natural wide player, as opposed to maybe someone who functions a bit more like a 10 in Jacob Ramsey. So I think you'll just see situations created whereby these two can profit from Daniel Malen's starting. And I thought that's important to discuss because I think all of those factors aid Villa, or aid these two at least, in terms of delivering goals and assists for us. Hence why I still think they're going a bit under the radar. Could be functioning as differentials. Last season, we refunded hundreds of members who did not win their mini league. And this season, the same offer is still running. A little bit generous if you ask me, but I'm in charge. If you don't win your mini league, terms and conditions do apply, of course, but you get all your money back. And the terms and conditions are rather simple. One league, you have to submit what league you're participating in for this offer by a certain date. And that's pretty much it. Obviously, if you do win the league, then the site would have given you ample help, and you'll probably be grateful you spent the money on it. And you're probably in a cash league, let's be honest, so you're probably going to make your money back from that as well. So if you would like to start winning at FPL with the tools of the team reveals from some of the world's best, with the use of the My Team AI tool, predicted points, the fixture ticker, customizable one, which is, in my opinion, the best tool on the site, and price changes throughout the season, then click the link in the description below and enjoy. Some of you would have seen in my last video where I looked at 8 players, some of which I thought were underrated and some of which I thought were overrated. This particular slide, I'm using it again because, of course, in the draft, I'm a big fan of him. I'm trying to get more people to pick him because I think he could do really well for their teams. And not much has changed since. And if what has changed is just positive. Obviously, I say Morgan Gibbs-White is more challenging to replace for this team, but I didn't actually go into him in much detail, thankfully so. And he, of course, signed a new record deal at the club, so he'll be staying, and that's a big positive. Another positive is he scored in pre-season, a very good header at that. So at least he's got one under his belt in pre-season, and I think that really just helps with momentum. In the next slide, I will discuss why Anthony Elanga's departure isn't as big of a deal as it seems, in my opinion, even though he gave him 6 assists last season. And even though he's such a good player. And also why maybe 20 goals isn't something that comes about again for him, but I still think he could do well. And, he could score 20 again. I wouldn't be that surprised. Brentford, game week 1. No Norgard, no Mbeumo out of possession, and no Johan Wissa as well. Big blow. Game week 3, West Ham at home. For me, outside of the promoted sides, maybe the best fixture you can have. The lack of particular physical profiles in the midfield, I think, is a big blow. The fact that they don't have someone who can function really as a lone pivot is a big issue as well. If they did, they could pair him with Alvarez, not Carlos Alcaraz, but Edson Alvarez, who I think showcases build-up abilities in the game away at Leicester last year. They could even pair him with Lucas Paquetá, who showcased it 2 seasons ago in a dual role with James Ward-Prowse. And if they did have that, I think they'd be a lot better in so many regards. But in a back four, without those profiles, the defensive transitions are too exploitable, in my opinion. I think Forest will do so. 5 and 6, 2 of the better fixtures you can have this season. Burnley away, Sunderland at home. Sure, Palace away, Arsenal away in 2 and 4 isn't great. But for Wood specifically, I think he's got it. I think he can do it, right? I think he can hurt them. Now, I don't want to repeat everything that I said in the last slide, last time around. So we will move on. But overall, I think there are so many positives being overlooked. So many. And like I said, I'm just trying to get more of you to pick him because I really do think he's going to do very well for your FPL team. Anthony Elanga recorded 6 assists for Chris Wood last season. That is fantastic, especially out of his 20 goals. That's a really good ratio to hit, especially when it's not like a Son, Kane, Rodgers, Watkins type of duo, but you've got Callum Hudson-Odoi and you've got Morgan Gibbs-White to contribute as well, and Ollie as well from fullback to an extent. However, I wanted to showcase 3 assists in particular because I think they're replicable for a player who's, even if he's of a completely different profile to Elanga, as long as he's got sufficient quality. Top left against Liverpool to make the score 1-0 early on, 8th, 9th minute, receives in a 10-like position, drifts in from the wider right zone, and plays a good through ball into Wood. For me, replicable. Bottom left against Spurs, very good cross, but again, replicable with sufficient quality. The one on the right, again, replicable. Good cross, but I think other people can get into that position, and he wasn't leveraging his unique skill set. For example, his pace, his burst, how good he is in transition, those type of skills. He wasn't really using them for these 3 instances. That's already half of them chopped off. Now, a couple, yeah, I think they were very much suited to Elanga, right? And I think someone else would find it challenging to replicate. But even if that's 2 assists, I think that's the biggest deal in the world, because the other thing is Elanga really thrived in transition, right? And wouldn't get too many goals from those type of transitions where Elanga was particularly dangerous, and they were utilizing his skill set. But rather, I think, especially with the way teams are going to set up against Forest at times and how Wood is almost his fox in the box and his positional awareness and ability to create separation and a yard and finish so consistently from snappy moments where it's just like, okay, you have one moment, complete a few actions, and then you can score from that, as opposed to like, I don't know, Iliman and Ndiaye carrying the ball from the halfway line. Those type, I think if you actually get a different profile on the right, more of a creator type, I don't know, someone like Brian Mbeumo, they're not getting him, but the point still stands. I think then you could even see him accumulate more chances and more situations which are aligned with his strength. So overall, I think they'll be all right. And then the second thing is Forest's drop off at the end of last season. Now, I think there are a number of factors which played into it, which won't be present at the start of this season. Biggest one, fatigue, mental and physical to the squad. You had injuries, but also mental fatigue by the time you got to the end because the squad wasn't so deep. Secondly, they hadn't been there and done that, right? Like, if you look at this squad, they're not overly experienced with winning big things and getting over the line. And I think this serves as a massive roadblock, even if one is not particularly conscious of it, when you have not done it. Because having experience, as everyone says, and everyone kind of knows, including you watching, even if you haven't played elite level sport, just reflecting on your own life, is key. I think not having those 2 things is a big deal. Also, they don't have like superstar talent, I would say, anywhere. And when I say superstar talent, I'm talking like world class, like undeniably world class talent. For example, like Chelsea, who got over the line, well, we have Cole Palmer. Yeah, sure, he didn't have the greatest games at the end of the season, but like he was still there, and I think that's a big deal. Whereas at the start of the season, to get over the line was as big of a deal, and they're still a very, very good team, right? So with all those factors not being as important, or even relevant at all at the start of the season, I'd like to think that they start quite strong, and they did so last year, so they know how to do that. The final player to discuss is probably the biggest differential in the starting 11, and that is Matheus Cunha. I'm becoming a little bit more bullish on him in particular. Not so much Bruno, because I still think Mbeumo will play the right-sided role as the inside forward, and then Bruno will have to drop back into the pivot, which is not where I really want him. But Cunha, yeah, I could see it. United also did utilize 4-2-2 in possession in the preseason game, so you actually could see Bruno be a little bit more advanced when the central centre back inverts, and as such, maybe he could be a good option there. But Cunha would join Højlund or Xerxes as the 9, probably better. I think the FDR could be a little bit misleading. Like, you see in the first 4, Arsenal and City, and you think, don't really fancy it. I'm not as bullish on the Arsenal defence early doors as I was this time last season. I was so bullish on Arsenal last season, and they paid me back for it. This season, not so much. I just think their mid-block is going to become, I'd say it's of a similar-ish quality. Obviously, they signed Supremacy, but I'd say it's of a similar-ish quality to last season, right? And I think when the attacking talent in the league has increased, so for example, if they played United with the same mid-block last season, not as many problems. Now, Mbeumo, Cunha, you've got Bruno as well, they'll cause them more problems. And I think in general, the attacking talent in the league going up across the board, like across a lot of the teams, means that at the moment, I don't envisage them keeping as many clean sheets as they did last year. Secondly, in those transitional moments, absolute monster through his carrying, right? Superb in that. Secondly, similar to Iliman and Ndiaye in a way, like he's got the quality in a moment to make something happen. And I think this is a wonderful, wonderful point. Like, I don't need him, for example, to play in a team that dominates the game, because I know if I give him the ball at the halfway line, there's a chance he'll just carry it, dribble past 5 players and smash it in the top corner. He actually did a couple times last season. If you think about the game away at City last year, towards the end of the season when City were going for the top 4, honestly, Wolves should have put them away in that first half. He could have put them away, and he caused them a lot of problems. So I'm not too worried about the defenses he comes up against. Obviously, it's better if he comes up against the worst defense, but I just think he's good enough to slay them. A bit like João Pedro, the Giant Slayer last year. And City are a weaker defense than Arsenal, almost undoubtedly, for a variety of reasons, just mainly the personnel. And the system doing the same, but mainly the personnel. And I think he could hurt them. I expect United to score that game. If that game was tomorrow and obviously the players were fully fit, I would expect United to score. So, with him being so good on the bonus point system, 15 goals and 7 assists in 29 starts last season, now on a better team, I think he might just be going under the radar. We might have just forgot how good he actually is. And now he's a mid. And now you'll get more from him out of possession. So who knows, maybe he'll contribute with some CBIT once or twice. So yeah, this is the one that I haven't quite shaken yet, because I do think he could actually be really good. And the fixtures, they don't worry me too much, especially with him. The other thing is, you'll see Højlund look to stretch that last line with those runs in behind. And I think they'll take United off the pitch when he finds himself in the pocket, similar to Ndiaye. He's going to probably hurt you. And just generally, if they use that 4-2-2, you'll see him higher up as well. So yeah, underrated for me, and certainly a differential. So this is the draft as a whole. Now, I'm sure if you're watching, you think, Jing, could you not have made the image a little bit bigger? And I wanted to get the title in it. So that's why it's a little bit small, and the dimensions for this screenshot were a bit strange. Change that for next time. Now, Pedro, Wood, Watkins, Salah, Ndiaye, Cunha, Rogers, Branthwaite, Agbadou, Cucurella, Murillo, and Sels. Obviously, Agbadou doesn't start for the first 4 game weeks. Now, you'll notice I didn't discuss Mohamed Salah and João Pedro. I feel like they're such big topics that I'm going to dedicate videos to them where they get more time, right? As opposed to this where I'm running through the draft. Hence why they weren't spoken about. In terms of Ronaldo, Potts, and Kinski, at the moment, they're kind of just placeholders until the best in their category emerges. Albeit, I heard that Potts was actually really good when he came in. Maybe I was onto something there. And that is the draft. And you will notice there's $1 million in the bank. So if you don't like something, or you do like something else that isn't here, you've got $1 million to go and spend on it. Maybe you want to find a route into, I don't know, another premium defender. You can do that. Maybe you want to upgrade one of the mids. Maybe you don't like Ndiaye. Maybe you don't like João Pedro. You can do all of that. Now, one thing with this draft is I noticed a lot of you relatively didn't have Cole Palmer. So I was like, okay, let me make a differential draft, which also didn't have Cole Palmer, because then it aligned with that view of yours as well. Because I know not all of you rate him as the best option for the start of the season. That definitely went into my thoughts when building this. I did specifically want to exclude him. I wouldn't say you've seen that draft on the timeline. I would say it's very quite differential in terms of the engaged managers at the moment. But I think it's very solid as well. So I hope that this video has helped, and you can take some of the thoughts. Maybe you fall in love with the draft, or at a bare minimum, you take some of the thoughts of some of the players, your own squad. That is all she wrote for this video, ladies and gentlemen. Certainly hope you enjoyed. I did, and I put quite a bit of effort into the video to ensure that could be the case. So if you do drop a like on the video, that would be greatly appreciated. And equally, I know some of you aren't particularly conscious of the fact that you have not subscribed, right? You just unaware. And when I speak about it, you're like, no, I probably have. If you could go and check, and should you have not done so already, you can click that button, give a few seconds, and it would really help me out. Greatly appreciative. All the good karma will come back in kind. Until the next one, which shall be out tomorrow, depending on when you watch it, I hope you have a terrific day, and see you then. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Goodbye.